Hey everybody, it's Go7, King of the Penguins here, with a quick little video talking about the matchup between Grimm and Adder. So very quickly, Grimm, his kind of gimmick is his day-to-day gives him plus 30% offensive power and a minus 20% defensive power, while Adder has no day-to-day at all, he just has the base units. So this is but Adder has very cheap powers with this just a 2 power bar for the normal, which just gives all of his units plus 1 movement. Very, very strong. And then 3 extra on top of that if he wants to get the super, which just gives all of his units plus 2 movement. Well, for Grimm, it's just more and more offensive power for his normal CO power and his super, with his CO power costing 3. But what's really defining this matchup, and why many people think that Adder is one of the worst matchups for Grimm, is that Grimm is very punished for having that minus 20% defense for the 30% offense. It makes him very much reliant on getting first strikes. So in like a situation like this, where the 2 units are 7 squares away, so they can't hit each other, Grimm is in a tight spot against Adder, since for one, Grimm can't reach Adder's tank, and if Grimm gets hit first, it's really bad for him. So he really wants to hit Adder first. But in this spot, he can't do that. Adder's just out of range. But Grimm is not actually out of range of Adder's tank. Because if Adder activates his power, now he can come hit this tank. And this would not be a good situation for Grimm. Let's give Adder his 1 comm tower. Yeah. 79 to 90. Almost one-shots Grimm's tanks on these first strikes. And you'll note that the damage range here, while normally it's 0 to 9 extra damage from luck, it's actually 0 to 11, because luck damage is affected by defense. And because Grimm's got that minus 20% defense, it means it's getting even greater. Like if instead of this being Grimm, this was Andy, we do 66 to 75. This is a huge, you see that's just 0 to 9. It's a huge, the minimum damage on Adder's strike here is larger than the max against Andy's. So that's just like how big of a threat this the zoning is here. So Grimm can't sit here, even when he's 7 away from an Adder tank. He either has to move forward to be in range, usually with just more units so that he can suck up the first strikes and then win on the counterattack, or he has to back up. And then now he's 8 away, and unless Adder has the super, he's safe. But what that means is that on Adder's turn, he can just take a step forward. And then you're just back in that same situation, except now Adder has more space and is closer to taking your cities and all that fun stuff. Now you might be thinking, but what if I just put infantry in front, right? Surely that would protect me, because that's kind of the whole point of infantry walls. They're hard to clear, but not so with Grimm. That's a Grimm infantry on the plains against Adder, normal power, tank, 1 comm tower, 99 to 108. It's almost always going to clear in 1 shot, so you can't actually wall with infantry effectively against these encroaching vehicles. But this is not all bad news for Grimm, especially in fog. Because in Fog, this scenario isn't going to be as likely, because for Adder to have these the zoning out tools, he also needs to have vision of Grimm's units, and Grimm could be hiding in like forests or just, you know, out of vision range. You'd have to scout to try and set this up. It can still happen, much less likely. Which also gives Grimm opportunities to have more surprise attacks from forests and the like, to get some first strikes. And he does have some tools. For instance, no comm tower even. Look at that, 99, 107 against a recon on the plains. Can one-shot recons. That means early game recon harassment isn't that great against Grimm because he can pick them off. But it's not like it's that bad, because against his infantry on cities, you actually knock him below 5, so he can't actually like do the immediate threat of capping after you hit him, kind of thing. So it's like it's, you know, it's the good and the bad. Being able to one-shot recons is really good though, and can be a big deterrent in itself. He also has a nice combo. If he has a comm tower, then he has a guaranteed two-hit kill with a copter against copter plus an infantry. You can tell it's going to be a two-hit kill because no luck involved. 91% if you got the lowest roll on the for the copter. 9%. 91 plus 9 is 100. So that's a guaranteed two-hit KO. And the converse is not quite true. It's 78 to 88, which is a lot. And then 8 to 19%. So it's not unlikely that that combo would kill, but it's not guaranteed. However, once Adder adds in the power here, 85. Oh, let's actually give him his. There we go. 85 to 96. Oh, okay. I was underselling him there. Still not guaranteed. Okay. But when you add in the power, now it's 93 to 104. He has a chance of one-shotting you. And 10 to 20. So now he has the two-hit combo, or two-hit kill combo guaranteed. And it's scarier for Adder because now this is relying on infantry, which are very slow, normally a 3 move for like Grimm when he's trying to get these combos off. But for Adder, they've got 4 movement. That's a big difference. He can get his infantry in much more readily than Grimm can. Oh, and this is in this case, the damage range is actually only going from 0 to plus 10, and that's just because of how the damage rounds with these partials. So in this case, this lines up just perfectly that it's rounding down, so you're not getting that full round. That's just interesting. Yeah. So in this matchup, Grimm really wants to get first strikes. He's going to need to rely on Fog to help him get in range that he normally would not be able to do in standard very effectively. He has some cool like one-hit KOs and two-hit KOs that are unique to him that he can try and use, especially killing the recons, because if you can deny the vision, that hurts Adder's ability to zone you and pressure you in that way. But in Fog, Adder has a different way of using his movement that isn't this zoning thing. Because what Grimm wants to do is he wants to get a bunch of first strikes, ideally on some overextended units, kill them off so that there isn't enough vision so that the opponent can't counterattack and clear out your stuff because your stuff's still super weak. But when Adder uses his power, instead of using it in such a way that he's zoning out the tanks, what he can do is have units in crossroad positions that when using the power, can protect on multiple fronts, giving him safer options when trying to be aggressive on either side, making it so he can front switch better, and even more importantly, his overextensions are not real, I guess is the way you could say it. If for other COs, if I'm fighting just a tiny bit out of the optimal movement ranges from this base, like the here and then here. So then if I'm fighting like right here on these shoals or like this forest and stuff like that, if I start this fight here, he's being overextended because he's like right out of the movement range from that base. But for Adder, because he gets that +1 movement, and it's going to be affecting everything, both the units in the fight, the units on the way to the fight, and the units that had just been built, and they're now also on the way to the fight. That means he's going to get 2 to 3 turns where that's not actually an overextension because everything en route also got accelerated by a step. So situations where you think you're having a favorable engagement where you've got your opponent in a slightly overextended state is not actually the case against Adder. He's got way more flexibility in that regard, which makes it even harder to set up engagements against him that will be favorable for you. And much more likely that when you can get stuck into a brawl or a unit trading back and forth, where normally you thought you'd be safe, but instead he reaches you and then you're hitting him back and he's hitting you back. And it's also very easy since it only takes him 2 power bars to get his normal power back. He can get that before his units run out of that grace period of the extra movement and get it back, and then he can just have a sustained overextended fight against you, which eliminates a lot of the pressure that you had on him. It means that he can defend more things than you would normally be able to as a CO, and also during all that he can do better front switches. It's really scary. So in Fog, it's not so much of this zoning thing or the 6 and 7 and 8 squares in between kind of thing and the walling thing. It's the being able to overextend where other COs can't. It's the being able to front switch, have units covering both fronts because of how the movement works. It's having these favorable 2-hit KOs that open up while using infantry with your fights. And there's also of course, because of Grimm having this negative to the defense, he can't really afford to go for big units, because if I go a big unit as Grimm and then Adder hits my big unit, he can now swarm it with infantry because they have better luck rolls. So even units that only rely on luck, this is on a city, my god. Let's put it on a plains. Let's say he got hit hard. He's been in a fight. He's at 2 health. Adder's got his CO power. He's got 2 infantry that can zoom in on me. 1 to 12. He can take out that medium tank, very easily, because he's got those higher rolls. So it's hard for Grimm in that regard. He doesn't get to keep many low health vehicles around, low health units around in general, which means that as the fights go on and Adder has some stuff survive, if Grimm doesn't have the infantry to follow up for the 2-hit KO, that's a 1 health battlecopter probably that's still around. 1 health vehicles, very good for checking forests, very good for scouting, and suddenly you can't front switch against him. He's got all the awareness of where your armies are, so he can either choose to front switch and punish you in a different area, or he can start doing that standard zone out thing because of the extra little vehicles he's got around to give him vision. So anyway, that's just a brief little rundown of what the CO matchup is like, what Adder's got in Fog that he can use against Grimm, and the few things that Grimm has that that he has to rely on to get an advantage. The biggest thing is that he can one-shot recons in the early game very reliably, which can be a big deterrent and also just vision denial. And then the copter wars, of course, is very good. And of course, Grimm can activate powers and do a lot of damage. Like now he always one-shots the copters, and he can have his copters going after bigger things like medium tanks, almost doing half. With the super, they'll do about half. Bigger units being sent against Grimm, much like how Grimm's big units aren't that great. Grimm can use his powers to do some serious damage against larger units as well. So if your opponent does that can be a very good chance for Grimm. Like his artilleries, for instance. Look at that. With the super, of course, 81 to 89, that's a lot. That's a big launch. But for the early game and a lot of the engagements, being able to, it's the one-shotting specific unit interactions, and the two-shot on the copter with the copter and infantry is nice, because that's something that people can overextend with the copter, and then you have an infantry there, and you can have your copter come in and infantry come in, and you'll be super happy. Anyway, I'll start working on the game next. I hope people found that interesting, and good luck and have fun out there.